The following is a list of Moors who have been kidnapped and are being held for a demand of income. The demand of income is being made against the family as well as through fraudulent submissions of documents alleging that they are caring for the people in some sort of long-term care fashion. These Moors have been kidnapped literally off the street by employees of various corporations that are guised as counties, cities, towns, township, boroughs. These names that we have all been mentally conditioned to believe are government are not. They are exactly what they say they are. They are municipal corporations, and as such, they, if you do the research, you will find that they are foreign corporations on American soil. Therefore, they do not have standing nor jurisdiction to make a demand of income or even bring a claim against the Aboriginal Indigenous people or any people on American soil, this making their actions criminal. However, as Moors, we must bring these crimes to the forefront via civil complaints against these unalienable constitutional treaty-secured rights of the people, Aboriginal Indigenous Moors of this land. If the municipal corporation has been provided, then we reference that along with the union state. If we don't have the municipal corporation where the employee works that actually did the kidnapping, then we just reference the union state that is bound and obligated to protect the people from foreign and domestic invasion. This list comprises Moors who have been kidnapped and are being held hostage by employees of various corporations on American soil, which is a violation of the American Constitution 1791, and it is a treaty violation, being that we are talking about Moorish Americans, Aboriginal Indigenous to this land, who have been kidnapped by employees of foreign corporation on American soil. This making this an international issue because you have two nations with one nation warring against another. Therefore, this is an international issue. If you have a family member near or far within your immediate family or one of the family that you know and you would like them added to this list, please send an email to MHHS-Eyes-Wide-Open@gmail.com. In the subject line, put Kidnap More, and please provide us with their free national appellation, the municipal corporation that the employee is operating through that kidnapped them, along with the union state that this corporation is in purview to. So with that, we start out with our sister Abkare Bay, kidnapped through a joint venture between Memphis Corporation and Shelby Corporation under the purview of Tennessee, Daoud Il under the purview of Arkansas, Amir Moslemin Il Kusu Ra Kush Bay under the purview of Missouri, Asar Patah Amin Ra Bay under the purview of Ohio, Jeremy Paler Il, Terry Thorne Bay, J. McCall Brooks Bay, Joseph Kanaday Il, Kush Amir Bunch Il, Emmanuel Billings Bay, Yassin Khalik Alamin Il, Michael Curry Bay, all under the purview of North Carolina, Noble Crisco Il under the purview of New Jersey, Messiah Aziz Il and Crystal Il, both kidnapped through a joint venture between Mercer Corporation, Freehold Corporation, and Trenton Corporation under the purview of New Jersey. We're still waiting on an update regarding baby Patricia Bay, kidnapped by Atlantic Corporation under the purview of New Jersey. Eldridge Terran Fisher Il, Marquis Sevion Il under the purview of Indiana, Solomon Il Bay, and Mumi Abu Bay under the purview of Texas. William Barrett Ill, under the purview of Virginia. Bomani Abidwil Ill, kidnapped by Chesapeake Corporation under the purview of Virginia. Che Ray Bay, under the purview of West Virginia. Thomas Lee Bay, under the purview of California. Victor Eduardo Avalle Juarez Ill, kidnapped by Harlem Corporation under the purview of Georgia. Natro Tahuti Ill, kidnapped by Benner Corporation under the purview of Pennsylvania. Rennie Bay, kidnapped by Hamilton Corporation under the purview of, Hamilton, Ontario Corporation under the purview, well, actually, it's Hamilton Corporation. The state would be Ontario, and that's that would be a union state, and it's on American soil that is referenced as Canada. And last but not least, Brian George Mills Bay, kidnapped by the employees working through Glades Corporation under the purview of Florida. Thank you very much.
All right, Islam, and welcome to MHHS-Eyes Wide Open. This is your host, Anita Ill, along with my co-host, Ms. Raheem Alex Ill.
Peace, Anna E. Peace, Morris.
Roz Mariah. Oh, wait. Wow, what a minute. What happened? Roz, I thought I saw Roz here a minute ago. What in the world happened to her? I could have swore I saw her here a minute ago. And, my eyes off just for a second and she disappeared. I'm thinking, right, let me just think.
Yeah, I pressed 4.
Are you okay? All right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I don't see you on the board at all.
I know. I accidentally hit 4, and it said you are now something in the host queue, and now I can't toggle back and forth. So as long as you can hear me, I guess I'm good.
All right.
I don't know what so does. It is a very weird thing, I have to say.
Yes.
But
all right.
But I'm peace and love.
All right. Okay. I see you. You're out of the queue. All right.
Am I in or?
Let's see. You're out of the queue, but I see you. I have to go find you. I don't know where you ended up.
I pressed 1 again, but it's not giving me the recording, so I have no idea whether I am in or out, but whatever.
You're in. I hear you. And
yeah. All right.
Also, we Cujo Adwael.
Islam. Peace, Morris.
Good evening.
Islam.
Peace.
All right.
Hey, Cujo. So, wait, I just going to ask Cujo something. Did you see what I posted on you, Cujo?
Oh, no, not even. I didn't see it.
I know how busy you are, but no, I mean on the Army Day publications. When you get a chance, check it out.
All right.
I also posted your new music video called Wow, Wisdom of the Woman. Yeah. All right?
Proper. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And the email and the email address for people to get the form if they want to become an honorary member, the MST of the A there, because that's what we recommend, would suggest. So that's posted off. All right?
Islam.
All righty. All right. Before we get started, just want to send a big shout out to family listening over near the corporate construct known as Great Britain, peace and love, near South Africa, peace and love, Japan, the Netherlands, Islam, Brother Albacet, the Philippines, peace and love. Family listening near the corporate construct known as Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and let's see, Cuba, Panama, Islam, Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, and to family we have yet to connect with. Islam, and peace and love to you. Thank you so much for listening. And, I'm just so happy that the information is getting out to everyone and they're able to, at least, if nothing, increase their knowledge base. Big shout out to our callers who call in every week, filling up the phone lines before the broadcast even begins. Thank you for sharing, lending your energy, participating, even, providing information. We need more of that. Everybody should be researchers coming to the table to provide us with some sort of information that we can use. Everybody ought to be participating in that. It shouldn't be one or two or anything like that. It should be everybody because there's so much that we have to catch up on. But
True.
For those that do participate and do that, thank you so much. I was tonight's broadcast is entitled, oh God, the Dred Scott case and the confusion promoted. And it came about because I was on Facebook posting up something and I saw a comment. I think I was posting up the syllabus for the class and I saw a comment from somebody and it led me to somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else. And then, and the somewhere else, I ended up seeing this post. And it was a conversation that was, made by a modern European, and he was talking about the Dred Scott case. I said, let me click on this and see what he's saying, And as I was listening to him, I was like, oh, my God, this guy's conversation is so incorrect. He's mixing apples, oranges, bananas, watermelons, and everything. And I'm like, wow, this is what happens when we as a people don't know who is who, what is what. We don't know the history of this land. And we think that we're the black people, and we think that we're the slaves. And we think that we're the ones that came over on ships. And we think that these colonies and or states and or territories that they speak of is literally a landmass. Now, I was able to upload, it's only 10 minutes and a couple of seconds. I was able to upload it, and what I would like to do, please, everybody take out pen and paper. Because what I would like for us all to do is to listen to this conversation. I started to listen to, it's 10 minutes, right? I only made it to like 3 minutes. And I got like 2.5 pages of comments. And I only made it to 3 minutes. So, but it is my intent to analyze this thing and put something up regarding it because the information is so incorrect. You have to know who the players are, meaning you have to know who is who to know what is what. You have to know this is taking place around 1846. The Dred Scott case went down 1846, right? And listening to it, I don't want to be referencing the Dred Scott case in any of my decisions. In any arguments that I put forth, because to me, there's only one thing that sounds relevant in this whole Dred Scott decision, and that is that these it sounds like they're saying that because this Dred Scott is not part of the United States of America, that he's not a part of that body politic. Therefore, Dred Scott is outside of their jurisdiction. And I know I probably hear people saying, well, that was the whole point of referencing Dred Scott. But when you look at all of Dred Scott, all of the misinformation that is the Dred Scott case, and today all of the misinformation that goes with it, I would be reluctant to even use it because it leaves way too much room for miscomprehension and misinterpretation. I sent out the syllabus to everyone that I had an email address on, and at the bottom of the syllabus is the YouTube link where this conversation, it's only 10 minutes of a conversation that clearly there must be more that I will be hunting for. But the 10 minutes of what this modern European is saying is so convoluted and ridiculous that I was like, oh, no, we have to talk about this, because the caption of this YouTube clip, it reads, black is a status, not a nationality. Now, I don't know black to be a status at all. It might be a caste, part of a caste system, but it's not a status. And you're right, it's not a nationality. But I would, to put that up there and then put 10 minutes of this modern European giving his dissertation on what he thinks the Dred Scott decision brought to the table without some qualifications is a huge disservice to people. And then, when you read the comment below, and it's a big comment. When I copied and printed it, it's like 2 pages of this comment that this person who put up this little blurb out of this video clip. And he starts talking about the 14th Amendment in his analysis in terms of his thinking that the black is not a status. And I think what they was trying to do, not trying to knock whoever put it up, I just think it's an excellent study tool. But I think what they're trying to say is that people need to acknowledge their nationality, because nationality is the order of the day, and that black, or, alleging to be black or even African American means that you're dead in the eyes of the law. And I think that's what they were trying to say, but sometimes trying to, you need more, you have to have a conversation about it, because it's just too much there for misinterpretation. So the class syllabus reads, as the Aboriginal Indigenous people of the land, we must be able to receive information and analyze it before putting it out as an opinion. There seems to be confusion regarding the Dred Scott case in terms of who is who and nationality, or the lack thereof. Couple this with the gross misinterpretation of the unconstitutional 14th Amendment, which is not law, and you have a recipe for a correct position. It must be noted and known that the key component of the unconstitutional 14th Amendment is that it is for corporations. This is affirmed in the following definition of person that can be found on page 1299 of the Black's Law 4th edition dictionary, which reads, corporations are persons as that word is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. So now let's kill all the noise about, oh, I'm not a 14th Amendment person. You can't be if you got blood flowing in your veins and you're breathing. You cannot be. But what the 14th Amendment does bring to the table, and if it is ever applied to any flesh and blood being, that evidence of treason, because the attempt that is being made is to elevate a fictitious entity to the same level as a flesh and blood being, which is what the Constitution protects. But, that might be going away, because if I'm not mistaken, I think it was maybe last year or the year before, there was some abortion or pro-abortion clinic or group of people that brought a case into the Supreme Court and tried to use the Fifth Amendment and apply it to the corporation, and the justice said that you can't use that because the Fifth Amendment and the Constitution as a whole does not apply to corporations. They're fiction. You got to look at this back and forth that they take, this back and forth position that they take, and really the only reason that it happens is because of that. The vast majority of the Aboriginal Indigenous people on this land, they do not know law. And so what that means is they don't have the necessary protection, and they don't know how to utilize it. So what I want to do, and hopefully I can find it in this, what I would like to do is I want to play this. It's 10 minutes. Please take out your pen and your paper and, jot down notes, because this conversation is very interesting, and the fact that this person really believes it's 10 minutes, 10 seconds. This person, the interesting thing about modern Europeans is when they talk, especially in the public, they always talk like what they're saying is fact.
Is this one of those times? Is this one of those times where you would say, "Don't listen to them"? You know how people say our people won't believe it unless a European says it, a modern European says it. This is one of the times where we say.
Well, in this case, the damage is that you got a modern European saying something. Our people have the tendency of, if it's coming out the mouth of a modern European, it's got to be correct. It's got to be right and correct. That, this conversation, this little 10 minutes, is so detrimental to people because what is being presented is so incredibly incorrect that to even use it to make a point that black is not a nationality, I would never use it. I would never use it because it requires way too much clarification. It requires way too much correction. By the time you correct every misinformation that this modern European has put forth, you might as well have just written something up or did your own damn recording or analysis of Dred Scott.
Right.
But the key things I want people to think about, keep in the front of your mind, and if you have your pen and paper, jot this down. The use of the term state and territory denotes a corporation. So when they start talking about state and territory, think Walmart. All right? Because Walmart is not the land. It is on the land, but it is not the land. When you hear the word black, you have to know that they're talking about modern Europeans because black means that you're uneligible to inherit. You can't inherit. That's why they got this infiltration going on of the Asiatic family, where it's like you see more than ever modern European daughters going after the darkest complexion Asiatic brother. And then because their children will be thought of as Asiatic, and they will infiltrate and take the vast estate that they're not eligible for because they are black. Black is not representing a skin tone. Black is talking about where you fit in the line of inheritance on planet Earth. That's what it's talking about. When you hear them talking about slaves, you have to know that the original and only slaves that came over here. I mean, they tell you every year they celebrate themselves coming over here on July 4th. What did they come over here as? They came over here as slaves, and the intent was for them never to be free. That's not any speaking. That's documented, and they starting to tell the truth even to this day in books that are being published that's telling the truth. All right? So those are just a few keys. I know there's so much more, but like I said, I only got to 3 minutes because there was so many notes that I was jotting down. I thought I would be able to whiz through 10 minutes. I didn't. So let us take a listen.
Well, it's so convoluted. Yeah, so much stuff to correct.
It was so much. There's and I didn't get a chance to document this, but remember the Dred Scott case took place in like 1846. This guy is saying that, if I'm not mistaken, I think he mentions the word democracy. Now, 1846 is relatively close to 1791, but if in 1846 they're talking about democracy, then you see that the infiltration of the United States of America construct that we set up for modern Europeans, Hillary Clinton mentioned it in 2012, Benjamin Franklin room, all right, that had already been infiltrated if they're talking about a democracy in 1846. One last thing. This guy here, he talks about the United States. He conveniently leaves off of America. It's really the Union States of America. But, you know, they put it out as the United States of America. He conveniently leaves off of America. So if you hear him say United States, you need to tack on of America in your mind when he's talking. Okay, so with that, I want to play this little clip.
Can you go over the tack ons again? When you hear them say, you said when you hear them say United States of America. When you hear them say something to think of Walmart, was that government? Black?
No, when they talk about the states and the territory, know that they're talking about a corporation because these were originally established as companies that eventually incorporated. Now, the reason they incorporate is so that this structure this company that they set up, it would be here for forever. Like, for example, it would be a place for their future generation to work.
Right.
All right? That's why it was incorporated, so that the structure, the corporation would be preserved. So that was the reason that, and so let's see, if you hear the word black, know that they're talking about modern Europeans and vice versa. When you hear them use the word white, they're talking about the Aboriginal Indigenous people of the land, because the word white is not talking about a skin complexion. The word white is talking about those who are eligible to inherit.
Which wouldn't be them.
All right?
Right.
Which would not be them. I want to say some more, but I don't want to give it away because I want people to listen to this convoluted dissertation by this modern European of what he thinks the Dred Scott case brought to the table based on this Judge Tannery. I think it's Tannery, and to the table in terms of their Supreme Court decision. I'm actually right now in the congressional records because I was Googling, because I had a copy of Dred Scott's presentation. It was like one page, simple. And so I was trying to find it on my computer, and I couldn't find it, so I was like, let me just Google it, because I'm sure I can probably find it again. But I didn't find that. But what I did find is in the congressional records, they have the Dred Scott decision. So I said, I'm going to print down. I'm gonna, you know, I can only copy it one page because it's a PDF, and so I'm copying it one page, and I'm up to like page 41. But I'm planning on reading that, and I'm thinking we might even put it out, send it out to people so that they can read it, and we can do a class analysis on the Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court Justice, because here's what a lot of people don't get. Supreme Court justices, yeah, they can hear an argument and they can make a decision, but at the end of the day, it is up to the people to take it and incorporate it. And if it is not in harmony with the American Constitution, 1791, I don't care what justice gave it to you, it's null and void. So I think the decision was made by Judge Tannery, and so or Tanner. So this is Albion's interpretation of that decision. So once again, take out your pens and your paper, take a listen, jot down things that might jump out at you. Because like I said, I only got to 3 minutes, and I got 2.5 pages. I didn't even get to 10 minutes. So with that, let's take a listen.
The Dred Scott decision, which was handed down by the Supreme Court in 1857, is one of the most famous or infamous decisions in all of the history of the Supreme Court. And it arose out of some complicated issues, but what it basically had to do with was the power of Congress to prohibit slavery in the Western territories. Dred Scott had been brought as a slave into the territory of Wisconsin, where slavery had been barred by Congress, and later he sued for his freedom on the ground that he had been in a place where slavery had been abolished and therefore should be considered free. And this goes all the way up through various courts, and the Supreme Court eventually rules, no, Dred Scott's not free, because 2 reasons. One, Congress does not have the right to prohibit slavery in the territories, and this basically declares the Republican Party unconstitutional. The Republican platform, Lincoln's platform, which is to prohibit slavery in the territories, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. Slavery has a right to go anywhere within the country in a territory, not a state. A state can abolish slavery. Illinois did. But the territories which belong to the whole country, slavery has a right to go there. The second principle put down by Chief Justice Taney in the Dred Scott decision was that blacks cannot be citizens of the United States. In a sense, Dred Scott can't even sue because he's not an American. This is one of the best examples of this notion of blacks as aliens. Even though he's born here and everything, he is not an American. The American family, as Taney says, is for white people. And in the most famous sentence in that decision, he says, a black man has no rights which a white man is bound to respect. Now, he's not saying blacks can be killed with impunity. What he's saying is, legally speaking, they are not part of the body politic. They are not part of the we the people that created the Constitution, and therefore they're just outside of the system. So they don't have any rights under the Constitution because the Constitution is for white people. Now, people have denounced Taney ever since for this, and for good reason, but the fact is this decision was codifying widely held views in American society, North and South. You're blaming the messenger in a sense if you simply hold the Chief Justice responsible for these views. But it's certainly the position that Congress could not stop the westward spread of slavery discredited the Supreme Court in the eyes of large numbers of Northerners, including Lincoln. Lincoln is denouncing them after this and saying, Lincoln, who is a law-abiding guy, says we don't have to recognize this decision. We're going to ignore it. It's a bad decision, and when the Republicans get in, we are not going to abide by the Dred Scott decision. So it shows you how far the sectional dispute has gotten that a guy like Lincoln will say the ruling of the Supreme Court can just be ignored because it's so wrong-headed. The Dred Scott decision is the result of a case that had begun in the 1840s and wended its way up through the state courts of Missouri and then into federal court. It comes to its climax in the winter of 1856 to 57, in that interim where James Buchanan of Pennsylvania has been elected president but doesn't actually take office until March 4th. At that time was when the president's inaugurated. somewhat irregularly, one might say, Buchanan, as president-elect, is in touch with one of the members of the Supreme Court, Greer of Pennsylvania, about what's going on in the court's deliberations. And it becomes clear that there's a 5-4 majority on the court in favor of the Southern position, that is, that slavery cannot be prohibited from going into the territories. But Buchanan realizes that a 5-4 decision, 5 Southerners versus 4 Northerners, is not going to have any legitimacy at all in the North. And he basically twists the arm of Greer from Pennsylvania to go along with the majority. So in the end, you get a 6-3 decision ultimately, with this one Northerner on the side. And Buchanan thinks this is going to solve the slavery issue. He's coming into office a few days after he's inaugurated. The decision is handed down, and he says, okay, the Supreme Court has decided, and this will settle the slavery issue, which the issue of the westward expansion of slavery had been roiling politics since the 1840s. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which opened the Kansas area to the possible expansion of slavery, had disrupted the political system completely and brought Lincoln and others back into political life. The decision is meant to eliminate basically the Republican Party, but it also poses a big problem for Stephen Douglas, the leading Democrat, because Douglas's position was popular sovereignty. That is to say, the people, the residents of a territory, have a right to decide for themselves if they want slavery or not. Well, Southerners immediately say, now wait a minute, if the Supreme Court says slavery must go into every territory, how can the people of a territory keep it out? They have no more right to deprive us of that ability to take slaves there than Congress does. And so how can there be popular sovereignty? In the Lincoln-Douglas debates, Lincoln asks Douglas this famous Freeport question at Freeport, Illinois. Specifically, he says, in accordance with the Dred Scott decision, can a territory legally keep slavery out of it? He's trying to widen the breach in the Democratic Party between Southern Democrats and Northern Democrats like Douglas, who still want to maintain a position that the territories can keep slavery out if they want. Douglas says, yes, they can, not by passing a law prohibiting slavery, because the Supreme Court has said they can't do that, but by simply refusing to give protection to slavery. Slavery needs a whole edifice of legal and police protection. If you refuse to give it protection, it can't go in. So therefore, the territory has the ability to keep it out, even with the Dred Scott decision in place. Well, of course, Southerners say, well, that's no good. How could a territory deprive us of our right? And that leads the South to move to its next position, which is Congress must protect slavery in the territory. If a territorial legislature refuses to protect slavery, then Congress has to go in there and protect it. So that means what they call a congressional slave code. Congress has got to pass the laws now guaranteeing slavery in all the western territories of the United States. So now Douglas will not accept that any more than any other Northerner will, and that position of the Southern Democrats eventually is the rock on which the Democratic Party splits apart in 1860. The Southern demand for a slave code in the territories and the Northern Democrats' refusal to accept that position. So ultimately, the Dred Scott decision is really one of the key things in disrupting. Most African Americans were bitterly opposed to the idea of colonization. In fact, some people date the beginning of the abolitionist movement not from William Lloyd Garrison's publication of the newspaper The Liberator in 1831, which some people say, but actually in 1817. In 1816, the American Colonization Society is formed. The colony of Liberia is set up in Africa as a place where colonized blacks from America will be sent. The capital of Liberia is called Monrovia, after President Monroe. So this is, a pretty close connection. In January 1817, the first black convention in American history is held in Philadelphia, free blacks from all over the country, and they strongly oppose colonization. They are mobilized into action, and they say, we are not Africans, we are free Americans, we demand our rights as American citizens, we do not want to be sent out of this country. And in a sense, this is the beginning of the modern abolitionist movement, because what distinguishes abolitionists from many others is not just their hostility to slavery, but that they say black people must be recognized as Americans and given their rights as Americans. That's what makes them so unpopular in the North. Not that they attack slavery, which a lot of people will say, I'm attack slavery, but they say, no, we free the slaves and make them equal citizens in the country, and that's a very radical idea. Now, by the 1850s, there are some African Americans who do say there is no hope in this country, they'll never get equality. Martin Delaney, a black abolitionist, actually goes to Africa and tours the Niger River Valley looking for a place where African Americans can emigrate to. Others look to Haiti or parts of Central America. This is different. This is voluntary emigration. It's different to say, okay, if black people want to leave, they should, than to say colonization, the government's going to ship you out whether you want to go or not. The number of African Americans who support emigration from the country is small. It's real, but it's small. It never really encompasses a large number of blacks in this period. A lot of the blacks who did go to Africa actually went as missionaries, religious missionaries, to try to uplift, as it were, the native Africans and teach them Christianity. It's a very interesting dynamic because, in a certain sense, the black Americans who went to Liberia, Sierra Leone, had bought into a lot of the main themes, of American history, of civilization, the notion that America represents a higher civilization, Africa is backward and uncivilized, and they're going back not to find their homeland, but to help raise up the benighted people of Africa. And they discover, of course, that they are very different from Africans in some ways, and it's not a homecoming in that sense, it's a missionary endeavor. So the number of black Africans who actually go to live and want to become part of African society is quite small at this time.
All right. That's it. I'm going to try and find this whole conversation and listen to it, but that's just 10 minutes of it.
Wow.
And it is
wow. Yeah.
It's so convoluted. Here's it's just so convoluted. One of the things that he said that I thought was really, really, I can't even find the words to express it. He says, even though Dred Scott is born on American soil, he's not an American, but a foreigner who came over from Great Britain as a slave is an American.
I love it.
Crazy. All about identity and status.
Yes. And then he says, now one thing he did say that is absolutely correct. He said, legally speaking, really lawfully, black, which you have to change that word. This is in one place where you have to really think about what is this trying to say. He says, legally speaking, blacks are not a part of the body politic. There's some feedback. But he doesn't say what body politic. Because if the so-called blacks that he's speaking of is modern Europeans, then they're not a part of the body politic that was here already, which is why we had to establish it for them. But now he's saying that this thing went down in 1846. So in 1846, clear, if the image that has been portrayed as Dred Scott is correct, he appears to be of Asiatic African descent. So if that is really talking about Dred Scott, the term black in that sentence is being applied to Dred Scott, who is of African descent, Asiatic, then what this is saying is that he's not a part of the body politic, which is the United States of America, and that is absolutely correct, which is why they can never have jurisdiction over you. Exactly. All right? Then he says something about we the people that created the American Constitution. He's trying to say is the foreigners came here. If you read the preamble of the American Constitution, if the people who created the American Constitution was already citizens of the United States of America, the preamble is then redundant. But
right.
even to put that aside, it is a historical fact that they adopted the American Constitution. They didn't write it.
That's right.
So they could never be the people that wrote the Constitution. And then this conversation totally contradicts Hillary Clinton. Look, if your behind wasn't even a government, and a nation, she says we, Morocco, we're Moors. Moroccans born on American soil, what they call America today. We help them establish themselves as a nation. So now, if we help them establish themselves as a nation, then we're the authorizing body.
Right.
That we, the people that is talked about in the American Constitution preamble, is us, the Aboriginal Indigenous people. Then they said,
right.
What is absolutely unconstitutional. He's saying that the Constitution, foreigners who came here on the slave ships of Great Britain as slaves to work in the colonies. The colonies is a plantation. Plantation is just a place. It's a company. He's saying that the American Constitution was only written for their protection. That's unconstitutional. The American Constitution is for anybody on American soil, regardless of whether you were born here or not, because it ain't about where you was born. Where you was born is for modern Europeans, because where you was born denotes who owns you. Ain't got nothing to do with bloodline. So then he says, the most ridiculous thing. He says that Congress doesn't have the right to prohibit slavery in the territory, just the state, corporations.
Yes.
Now, here's the huge conundrum that this man has put himself under. The state and the territory was simply a corporation where people work. He's saying that Congress does not have the right to prohibit slavery in the territories and colonies, only in the territories, only in the states. Then in today's language, they're saying that the Labor Department doesn't have the right to go to the Supreme Court and get that, or even Congress, because, see, this is a matter of Congress. Congress doesn't have the right to regulate the labor laws and abolish child slavery, which they did. But that came later. Let's go back. The whole reason you got modern Europeans on this land functioning in any kind of independent capacity at all is because they declared their independence from Great Britain. The only way they was able to declare their independence from Great Britain is if the Moors here protected them because they were slaves. If we didn't protect them, the Moors of Great Britain would have came over here, knocked them upside the head, carried them right back to Great Britain, and threw them in the dungeon like they had been doing for years. The only way that they could have obtained their independence, freedom from slavery, is if the Moors had promised them protection, which we did.
Yeah.
So let's not get this twisted. This man don't know his own history.
Sure.
He doesn't know his history, the history of his forefathers. who came out of the prisons of Great Britain as thieves, robbers, murderers, and debtors. These people were slaves before they even got to American soil, and it was never the intent of the British Moors to ever free them. And so, you know, this conversation, it was very convoluted, but it still needed to be discussed, and it needs some clarification, and people need to study, because this kind of conversation is what you're going to run into all the time, because everybody has been misinformed about what truly happened between the 1500s and 1871. Everybody has been misinformed, even modern Europeans. And I'm not saying this to put them in this place where, oh, you're the slaves. And, you know, I'm not. It's just to get the heritage right. Get it right. And know that we don't mean you any harm. If it wasn't for us, you would have never been here in the capacity that you're functioning today.
And that's what Hillary Clinton basically affirmed.
Yes. Yes, but, I mean, it's just so much that you can pick out and talk about in this 10-minute conversation. But I don't know who this modern European is that's talking, because it's not mentioned. But I definitely, how you know this man is talking out of context, because he uses the word Republican, Democrat, police. Let's see. Yes. And sovereignty. Okay? You can't have sovereignty without a nationality, and because sovereignty, the only thing sovereignty is saying is, how are you tied to the land? How are you tied to the land? These people are tied to a corporation. They're not tied to the land.
Mm-hmm.
All right? They came over here as slaves to work in the various companies that was established that eventually were incorporated. All right? So you can't be a sovereign on American soil when you came over here. You're a foreigner. And you don't even, look, when you go to the Statue of Liberty, they tell you, they immigrated, they left, and then they immigrated, I-M-M, and then they immigrated, E-M-M, meaning they left I, and then they entered E. Okay, so you're a foreigner. How can you end up in a superior place above the Aboriginal Indigenous people? How does that happen? How does a universal law, how does the American Constitution, which is based on universal law, get to be applied only to the foreigners, and the Aboriginal Indigenous people is totally left out? No protection whatsoever. And then how does a foreigner become the Americans of the land when the definition of American is the copy-tone people found here by the Europeans? How do you get to be the Americans, and then the Aboriginal Indigenous people, the true Americans, are no longer the Americans? Not that American is a nationality, but you sure can't be that. And we afforded you protection, and then you take us, you remove us from the protection we gave you. That's some backstabbing, convoluted crap, boy. I'm telling you, boy, Saturn got, retribution justice got something in store for these modern Europeans, and I'm not saying all of them is bad. But those that promote this misinformation, they don't really retribution justice got something in store. They need to before you put out misinformation like that, go at the history. Y'all, how you gonna tell me you don't know it and you celebrate it every 4th of July? And if you don't know it, last thing, if you really don't know it, go read it. Your Declaration of Independence because you talk about it in there. In the Declaration of Independence, they tell you how they was a slave and enslaved and continue to be enslaved.
Right.
So how you gonna act like you don't know who the slaves is, and then you gonna try to put the cast of black on the white on the Aboriginals, the heirs? You're gonna try and make the heirs the uninheritable people, and then the uninheritable people the heirs. That is some
right.
trading places, boy.
That is
Islam.
Islam. I just wanted to bring. No, you made a great point. But they don't know just like we don't know. That's why we need to let's chill out, study, and just begin to be who we are. Because this demonstration that you just put there shows and proves to even our people that the miseducation goes deep. The information they didn't want known, it goes deep because he's a modern European, and you just showed just in those minutes how not only is he contradicting and lack of knowledge himself, but we can prove it. And some of the things that documented proof already. So our people need not to feel too bad because really they're the Aboriginal, as you already said. The definition of American is the various copper-colored people found on the continent when the Europeans got in. That's documented also, and in other ways we know it's to be true. So, and then and another thing that got to me, which is about the states versus territories. Now, this is very interesting because this is about jurisdiction. And in Article 3 of the Constitution, which is the judicial portion, where judicial power, authority, etc. is, and it clearly says, and he just said it too. He said it. He said, well, this is a state, but not in the territories. Well, let's wake up, people, because this is the continent, is the national domicile, the land that is the ancestral estate of those who are the Aboriginal Indigenous, more American. That's the national, all right, domicile. So he just said, and it is here in the Constitution, and affirmed that. Because in the Constitution, Section 3, I'm just going to read this portion. The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury. And such trial shall be held, crime shall have been committed. But when it is not committed within any state, well, just reading that alone right there in Article 3, what do you mean if it's not committed in any state? Wake up, people, because the states are within their own state jurisdiction. That's what the United States of America are for, the Union States, which house these modern Europeans who were enslaved by Britain, got their independence, etc. And we reached out, the olive branch of peace, allowed them to first sail on the seas without being molested, acknowledged and recognized them, as Hillary Clinton also affirmed, the first nation to recognize them. And then when they got here on the land, it was this law of the land for them to abide by. They didn't make up the law of the land for them to abide by. That's why, as you said earlier, and we the people, that's all the people, all right? Not them. We the people do ordain this for these other people that was coined as the United States of America. Now, this should be clear as to why you, Moore, cannot be more a resident member or citizen of the United States of America. I mean, it's just it's just right here. So when it says it's right here in Article 3. But when the crime is taking place, but when it has not been committed within any state, that's like that. Well, when it's not committed within any fort or any plantation, because that's originally what they were. and in this case, in any sales territory, because their boundaries that they've advertised and pushed in your head so much are fictitious boundaries because they are as well. In other words, they're occupying on another's national domicile, which is what you said. Sovereignty comes from your tie. What is your tie to the land? Their tie is quasi-national. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So if their tie is quasi-national, how could you possibly be in that jurisdiction? You can't. Let's talk real talk here. So there it is. And if it's not committed within any state, and as far as you're concerned, you're never in any of those states. You are always on the American land, always. Those states are a veil on top of occupying as such on the national estate, the continent, which is not New Jersey. The continent is not New York. The continent is not any of those things. In fact, when you go to find out what any of those things are, you'll find originally they were the Union States, and they were and still are sales territories. Because remember, you're always saying they're doing commerce. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it is. So it says when it's not committed, it shall be at such place or places as Congress may by law have directed. Now, prior to that, I just want to say this. In all cases affecting ambassadors, public ministers, and consuls, and in those in which a state shall be a party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. What does that mean? That means when you're going into these meeting rooms that they're lying to you calling court, lying to you saying they have judicial authority, lying to you saying they're government, right? It means that if it says on it the state versus you, which all of it does, then you know right away they're lying because they can't hold any court matter in their municipal courtroom or even their state, so-called state courtroom, because if the state is versing you, then it has to be the original jurisdiction does not belong to them. Then you go back down to what I read. The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crime shall have committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places Congress allowed. Well, guess what? You can never say that you were driving in the state of any of these things. You must always stick to the right jurisdiction and say that you're on your ancestral estate, national domicile, North America. That's the correct language for you to effectuate what's in the Constitution. That's it. Jurisdiction, right word. We can talk about that, but I just also wanted to make one other note. When you told everybody to be careful about when you hear white man, don't think of them because they're not the white man. The white is definitely a status, and it said the American family or America was for the white man. They're not talking about themselves, even though he thinks he's talking about themselves. But you just knocked that out of the box because how does someone who was already here suddenly not become a party to or a member or a national or citizen of whatever rank they choose, really, on the American land, but yet foreigners admitted to be foreigners, they matter. I mean, that's craziness. And lastly,
I know.
Yeah, but, you know, the prophet said if I could just get you to thinking, you free yourself. And lastly, and then you can make a comment, especially about this state, that territory. I also heard them talk about how they went off to teach, the missionaries was to teach Christianity. Well, everybody ought to know now. That's just the extension of the Christian Crusade conquest. So they went over and established Liberia. We tell people Liberia is a corporation. It's a colony. That's what it actually is. And that was established, and he mentioned that. So yeah, so I yield the floor, but I just definitely think we should really go in on a little more. But that's state versus territory right there. People have to start talking the right language, man.
Oh,
because you can't.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Before we continue, let me just read you because I went and pulled up the definition of territory out of the Black's Law 4th edition dictionary, page 1642, and it reads, a part of a country separated from the rest, particular jurisdiction. Then under American law, it says a portion of the United States not within the limits of any state which has not yet been admitted as a state of the Union, but is organized with a separate legislature and with executive and judicial officers appointed by the president. Now, I just read that definition, but you all to know that definition is void as of 1791 because the supreme law of the land is the American Constitution. So what can be on American soil and have their own legislature, executive, and judicial department and president? Where is that? And
can I just interject the case law that supports what you just said real quick, what you're saying? I just wanted to interject this case law and then you can finish. The people of the United States that are resident within any state. So that's not you. Talking about them, right? Guess what it says in this case law? It says they are subject to two governments. One is a state government, and the other is a national. But there is no need to be conflict between but there need be no conflict between the two. Why? Because all state governments, if that's what they are, corporations or whatever, must follow the national government, which is the Constitution that the prophet said you must answer up to, right? So that's why there's no conflict. And this is United States versus Cruikshank, all right? I just wanted to, so that what we're talking about right now, maybe the people can clearly separate and understand what jurisdiction really is. So it supports what you just said as well. And Article 3. Go ahead.
Right. And lastly, I want to read this definition that was sent to me of democracy. It reads, democracy is defined as the absence of hereditary or arbitrary class distinctions or privileges. This is the fifth and last definition. That is major because that is taking away your inheritance. It comes out of Webster's Collegius Dictionary, 11th edition, page 131. So essentially, democracy is a way for them to steal the inheritance of the people because it is defined as the absence of hereditary inheritance. That's unconstitutional. With that, I yield the floor.
Indeed. Peace. So, yeah, I just wanted to add on that, this is, as you all pointed out, this is a very big case to analyze because there's so much that goes with it, specifically in the aspect of the territorial jurisdiction when, you had Europeans, because you got to remember, too, when they first set up shop, it was only 13 colonies, so they didn't have territorial jurisdiction outside of that realm, and there was a lot of so-called states or quasi-national domiciles, that came over as corporations. Is that back echoing me, or if anybody could check their phone? I don't know if it's just me, but
I'm gonna mute.
Me too.
Yeah. So when you look back at it, it was a lot of reasons why the Europeans was trying to move in west, outside of that so-called Union State or U.S. jurisdiction. But even with that being the case, of course, all of those cases where the state shall be party, the Supreme Court had original jurisdiction and all of that, but they like over these matters, but not over, the territory. And it's funny because these are all pilgrims who don't really have a legit claim to the land. But all of these aspects that, they were looking at, that's what they had their eyes on. Like, you didn't have the territorial jurisdiction outside of the colonies or, those so-called states, which are quasi-national domiciles that weren't, quote-unquote, admitted into the Union. So you was looking at a lot of that, too, as well as the fact that, they're right. And still to this day, I think, me personally, it's not, it is what it is. But it's like we was fine without, dealing with that jurisdiction. And, of course, there was a lot of us, more inland as well. You already know about the civilizations midland and things like that. So, all of these things, like we we had a whole separate jurisdiction because they didn't encroach like that, in certain time frames. So as more states, because you got so-called states that were being admitted as early as 1908, and things like that. So looking at it from that perspective, but we could really look back and say, like, with the distinction between us, as the European was mentioning, and even though we're not black people, again, that goes back to the color game, giving people the myopia with the third eye as far as looking at this thing in a kaleidoscope way, because it's a color game. So there you have the usage of black people, not having rights that, quote, white people are bound to respect. And this is all of it flipped the script because they're not Americans and they're not white people. And the word black never really applied to us, as you mentioned. So, again, it goes back to everything involving, the European and Moors or Christian powers and, the Pilgrims, all of these people, like, we don't share the same exact nationality. Therefore, there should be distinguishments between us. So even if you come up and apply that to modern day, like recent history, Moors weren't going to school with Europeans. Not even that hasn't even been 60 years, since that happened. So, it's like there's been a lot of things, and I think we definitely were very much productive without the European, not taking away any credit to what it is right now, and everything that goes with the story, everything, like the trials, because they talk about people who was trying to fight for freedom in the so-called slavery days, but there's people who actually won those cases, such as Elizabeth Freeman and things like that. And not to get off the Dred Scott, but, all of this is interrelated, like, because there were Moors or beaten cases, dealing with the corporations or the original 13 corporations or colonies, and still beating cases. So it's like, with the Dred Scott situation, it's just odd because it's not odd, but it is what it is because there's so much that goes with it in the great demonstration on nationality and birthright. And as it says in, I forgot the European's name who said this, but it's on the video on Mantis Views 29, and he was explaining it from the position like, look, if Taney is saying he cannot sue, then the only thing that is left to do is drop the case. So if he doesn't have the protection to sue, then there's nothing that should be binding in the obverse fashion, meaning that, they shouldn't be bringing charges against people who are not European and things like that because, there's a distinguishment in international law. So I think that's one of the main keys as well to take from it is that it's a whole lesson in identity there, which is always the first issue, identity, status, lineage, and things like that, to always apply present day. Because, this is key. This is the foundation. Everything was based off the land and identity, going back to the land, the territories. You know, when they was talking about the territories, these was lands that weren't claimed by states at that time, you know, or quasi-national domiciles. So, you know, they had no jurisdiction like that over them. And again, for Moors, it's a key lesson in history as far as territorial jurisdiction, impropria persona, all of these things, because it wasn't until the Naturalization Act of 1870 where the Europeans on paper, like, and we know they're not white people, but when they put the act in and started commonly being counted as, quote, white people, you know, that was 1870. So at the same time, we got to keep in mind that that act was statutory. They are not white people. And when you look at it at that, you know, that these are not referring, when they talk about white persons and white people, this does not refer to the modern European, the pale-skinned nations of Europe. So it's key to know that, know yourself, know who they are, you know who they are not, and get into the international law with it, because that's what it really boils down to, is international law. Like he said, you know, we was distinguished, and I think that's an advantage that we had, you know, not in a way whereas we're hateful or anything like that, but just like they have their own institutions and they have their own ideas and their own, you know, community centers and their own everything, like, you know, that's how they're moving. And that's I don't see like anything wrong with Moors doing that and not feeling like they're in a position where they hate, you know, the European or y'all are outcast, or no, like none of that. You know, confident in the fact that the answer is in turning our mind state back to our foremothers and forefathers. So again, like you said, you know, if he couldn't sue because he was quote unquote black, then there should have been no cases at all, you know, involving so-called black people. You know, if you're gonna strictly exclude somebody from a specific process, you can't deal with them fairly in the equilateral with equality. Like, it'll be a unilateral relationship. And again, as it's stated in the Declaration of Independence, that, you know, all men have the right, all people, you know, have the right to abolish the so-called forms of quote-unquote government, and they only derive the just powers from the consent of the government. So you would have to consent to that for that to be actually legally, lawfully binding, like lawfully. So again, I would say, you know, that Dred Scott, you know, with the whole situation and the fact that they was dealing with so-called Wisconsin, but it wasn't a quote-unquote state, you know, is a big lesson in territorial jurisdiction, because the quasi-national domiciles still don't really have legitimate claim to the land. And that's just my analysis, Islam. So I yield the floor for now.
All right. You know, there's something else that there's also another part of a definition to me that is most impacting in the Black's Law 4th edition dictionary, when it gives you the definition of the word person. And I only just saw it, and I was trying to carve it up so I can find it again. This is right above the definition where it says corporations or persons, as that word is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. Above that is the definition. Corporation is also a person under a penal statute. And remember, I think it was last week or the week before, we did our broadcast was entitled Penal to Penance, and we read the definition of penal. So now when you when you add this definition to the definition you already have as being a corporation, corporations are persons, as the word is used in the 14th Amendment, if you go and you look at every statute that these people are trying to impose on you, they always have a definition of the word person. And the word person in every single statute is defined as an association, a corporation, and so, these statutes are being used really as a way to infringe on the people's liberty, and they're not law, and they were never meant to apply to the people whatsoever. They were written, and if you do the study on the word statute, they were written to be applied to merchants, really. So these statutes are written to apply to corporations, and then when you go back to the Constitution, it says you got to read the history to know that the Constitution was written so that no people can ever be infringed on by any employee of a corporation. I don't care what their title is. They can be the CEO or they can be a worker. They cannot infringe on the liberty to ensure that that does not happen. Now, and this man, like you said, Ms., one of the things that he said that I think is really impacting is that he basically said that these foreign companies / corporations that today are referred to as states, county, city, town, township, boroughs, they don't have any jurisdiction over anyone who is not a member of them. And the Aboriginal Indigenous people can never be members of any of them. So, in a way, it's basically saying that they don't have any jurisdiction. But, it's one thing to say, oh, they don't have jurisdiction. But can you substantiate it? Can you substantiate it? And see, I think quite frequently we run into a situation because we can say it, but can we substantiate it? Meaning, in law, you have to have verifiable documentation of your claim. Now, I know I hear people saying, but they don't ever have documentation. Yeah, well, just because they don't mean that you're not supposed to follow the law. In law, you must have verifiable documentation of every claim that is being put forth, and it must be in affidavit form. If it's not, then it's really hearsay.
It's interesting what you're saying, and that's what we're sharing, really, and everything we do, I think. It's the documentation. Like, it's easy to say, well, you don't have jurisdiction over me. But if you don't know why, then you can't answer that. You can't stand on the next thing that might go down. And that's essentially, that's what I think they're working on now. They found out that the people are saying it, but they're not really about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's called the chink in the armor, and that's just enough for them to get their fangs in there and suck all the blood in the pot. It's just that simple.
Yes. Absolutely.
And look at this. When you say, we say, listen, there's a corporate person and a natural person, right? There's a difference in law. And then, like, even just on this show, we just showed so many ways. One of the first things that should stop everybody at a screeching halt is all of those who think that they're marching or doing activities under 14th Amendment leadership. I mean, it should just put it all to a screeching halt. Because if you look up the definition of person, it says, oh, by the way, there is a fictitious person and a natural person. Let us give you an example. of the fictitious person. Oh, it's the one as it is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. So bingo, you should say, oh, my gosh, the 14th Amendment was written for corporate persons, right? And then you should know that you don't need a whole lot of processes in that respect to stand with that truth. Because it's an assumption, like people say, well, they're treating us like 14th Amendment people. No, you're treating you like 14th Amendment people.
Yes,
and
yes.
they're taking advantage of it. Right.
You know, a lot of times, and this is just my opinion, a lot of times when we go into these tribunals to put forth a counterclaim, we go in, you know, with the thinking that, well, not thinking. We go in. We don't allow them. We don't even allow them to put the documentation on the table in terms of them treating you like any sort of, you know, alleged 14th Amendment person, meaning they're treating you as though you are a corporation. Really, I mean, there's just so many ways that particular cat can be skinned because, number one, if you're really a corporation, then why are you even standing there?
Exactly.
Because a corporation does not exist. I think this is just me. I think that we go in saying, I'm not a 14th Amendment person, but where is the documentation that they said you were a 14th Amendment person?
Right.
You know, you gotta, because now what you're making is an assumption, and in law there's no assumptions. Law is exact. Right now,
so what are you saying?
if you're saying that they're treating you, if you believe that they are treating you like a 14th Amendment person, well, that you can't even say that because a 14th Amendment person doesn't exist. So they can't be treating you anyway. But one of the things that we have to get better at doing is asking the right questions so that can be given to you that shows that they are using 14th Amendment policy procedure on you.
Okay. So
now you have verifiable documents, because I'm going to tell you right now, they invariably, I mean, we have seen case laws where they have referenced the 14th Amendment in their decision-making process or their opinion-making, let me put it that way, opinion-making process. If anybody gets any sort of an opinion from anyone and they reference the 14th Amendment, they just gave you verifiable documentation of treason.
So you're saying that rather than going in with the assumption that they're treating you like a 14th Amendment, let them lay on the table
yes.
And most people will say,
absolutely.
Well, it's a certificate. Oh, well, if they lay that on the table, you already know
yes.
that's human trafficking. They're human trafficking you.
Yeah.
But now, check it out. Now we got people who are going into these ministerial venues, and they are putting the birth certificate on the table.
Isn't that something? Oh, my God, they have no idea what they just did. And they're authenticating all that crap. Like, whoa, Lord, have mercy. They're just saying, you got to go along with the program.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's like writing a writ of discovery for them to give you information, and you show up with the information that you wanted them to give you in the writ of discovery. They're looking at you like, okay, well, let's proceed. You done brought the information you asked me for that I wasn't going to birth. I wasn't going to give it to you, but since you brought it and put it on the table, let's proceed.
Right. That is interesting because everything has to have evidence, and it's like this: either you are violating, committed a crime, and there's an injured party, or you breached some contract. So if you committed a crime, the injured party must be present so that you can, or the alleged injured party, so that you can.
Or they must have a sworn affidavit. If they're the injured party, they must have a sworn affidavit. And the affidavit can't come from a party that wasn't even there, i.e. the police, because that's hearsay.
Right. So, so the point is that either that, and all that goes with that, or you broke or breached a contract. So lay the contract on the table that you broke or breached. Either, you know what I mean? If it's a contract, lay it down for evidence of what you violated. Or if you committed an injury, because upon this system there can be no sanctions unless there is in fact that injured party, and they gotta be there too. So what you're saying is, well, don't you bring them proof of anything. Let them put on the table what it is. Now we know that they'll say, well, in the state of New Jersey, you broke so-and-so. Well, you got something for that, too, because that's a statute they just laid down, and it has to be what? Backed by law. You want to see the law, if that's the fact, because they'll call a statute law. You know?
Right.
And then we can show you that you can't be in the state of New Jersey anyway. Anybody, when they say in the state of New Jersey, what they're literally talking is jurisdiction that you are a corporate member of that corporation.
That's right.
And that should be proved too.
Right. Because you have to go back to the history of them establishing these companies or colonies, really, because they were actually before they were colonies, they were religious parishes, and to now really get the full flavor of what we're dealing with, you got to go and look up the word parish. Those are religious colonies. Now, if you are a proclaimed or declared Moor, all right, these religious colonies were Christian. How can a Christian colony have any jurisdiction over someone of Islamic religion? And everything that they do is based on religion, yet they want to talk about separation of church and state. But there is no separation.
The people don't recognize it's religion unless they're listening to what you're saying now. Exactly. They don't realize it. They're discovering.
That's exactly like that's why we got to study. That's exactly because, look, we've been quoting this case law that talks about ministerial officers. And I think it was maybe the latter part of last year that I really went and looked up ministerial. Ministerial. Now, you don't even have to look it up. Just think of the etymology of the word ministerial. What are they talking about? A minister. A minister of what? A religious organization. Every single traffic court, so-called family court, so-called traffic court, so-called tax court, what else? What else do they have? So-called, what else do they have that's absolutely unconstitutional? Juvenile court. All of these things are run by a ministerial officer. So what religion is that? You already know. All right?
Wow.
What religion is that? And how can you be a party to a Christian religion?
Wow. Is that why the prophet said you must declare your name and your your nationality and your religion? Yeah, might be.
Yes, but we need to study because now when you look at this piece of information, How are you talking about a First Amendment violation? Wait a minute, I am not a part of your religious organization. How can you ever presume to have jurisdiction over me? See, this is why the prophet added that religious arm, modern religious arm, the first to tie us into the First Amendment of the American Constitution, because anciently we already had religious protection, right? But this is, I can't say it enough. The prophet, he was just an absolutely brilliant son, brilliant chapter 2 son, absolutely brilliant. And, everything that he left for us, man, if we would just do a little bit of studying, if we was to enforce even 1/4 of it, we'd be in a lot better place, a lot better.
Oh.
And here's the deal, though. Absolutely correct. But, my mind was just thinking some of the things that we're seeing in terms of the proper wording and jurisdiction, proper jurisdiction, which is words. And even with the religious part, there's Moors who proclaim to be Moors, but want to know, can they still be Christians? Like what the world, that's lack of study and understanding of who's
absolutely.
Who and by now, absolutely, and that's why they're getting eaten up, because the consciousness level of this information of our own heritage and history and law has raised to the point where they're really dying. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all becoming exposed, but they're just out to try to get what they can. So some people will go in, but they haven't. I guess it's just because haven't studied enough of what needs to be said, or what, let's more say, what needs not to be said. So because we know that they'll go in, and even maybe in their rich, and they'll put that they live in a specific state.
Yes.
And they have
or
no
they're a resident
idea.
of. Or they're a resident of.
That's right. They have no idea that they just gave the jurisdiction, and that's why they're run over. And that's why they assume now and made it harder. Not that it made it harder. It's just that everybody has to stand stronger on others, or not on others, but they made it like, oh, you just gave the reason why we can still press this. But it's all going to come to a head. We know that it's coming to a head.
Oh, absolutely. It is. But here's the thing. A lot of people don't get this. Like, these people, they're not your friend. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they do. They're your friend today only until and as long as it serves their purposes. All right. So I don't have a problem with that, because at the beginning and the end of the day, we got to know that that's not your family. Okay. That's not your family. All right. So don't be looking for them to be your forever friend. That is not the nature of our relationship. So what that means is, if you think, and there are some Moors who have this misunderstanding, gross miscomprehension. If you think that when you go in to these ministerial venues, flying by the seat of your pants because you didn't study, you didn't prepare, that they're going to say to you, you forgot this, or no, you want to reword this like this, or, no, I know you didn't mean to say that more. They're never going to do anything like that. They're never going to pull your coattail, because for them, the name of the game is generation of revenue. You are a revenue generator as long as you are not studying. That's all you are to them, until you make it not profitable for them to mess with you. And the only way you're going to be doing that is if you study, it's said, and you go in prepared. Like, they are not going to knock you over for nothing. You came in there, you did your studying, you know your ancestral line. So that means you ain't gonna walk up in there talking about, no, that's not me, that's the straw man. What does that mean?
Yeah.
No, or you're not going to say something that's going to put you in their jurisdiction, or you're not going to go in there. Look, you don't want to go in there and you talking first. Let them lay out their strategy for you.
Right.
But I sat in these ministerial venues and I've seen how people go in and they start negotiating before they even put their strategy on the table. And trust and believe. This is one of the reasons why I say, if you have the ability, go in and just sit down and observe unobstructed. Because because a lot of times we have this great fear of the unknown. Like, well, many of us, we've never been in a courtroom. And because we've never been in a ministerial venue that we have been led to believe is a courtroom. We've never been there. So the unknown alone makes us think it into more than what it really is. And you go in with fear because you're not prepared. If you're studying, you ain't got no fear. You might be trying to figure out, what your approach is going to be, and you might in your mind go over your notes, but you're not really afraid because you got this. You already know that these are foreigners on American soil, came over here on the good ship Jesus. There's no way in hell they can have jurisdiction over you unless you give it to them somehow. And look, and I'm not beating nobody up because you may inadvertently give it to them. Don't beat yourself up about that either, because that's a learning process. It was a lesson for you. Learn from it, and then tighten up that particular hole. That's it.
And if I can add on,
yes.
One of the things they try, from my experience, I know one of the things they try to do to trip you up is, like, specifically if you mention due process, they'll mention it like, well, under the 14th Amendment. As soon as you mention due process, they're trying to tie in the 14th Amendment. Like, in some slick way, that's what they try to do. And I've noticed that. And the reason I noticed that is because I know that within that's where they're trying to get the personam, because they're talking about persons born and naturalized in the United States, etc. So, like, if, like, we say, well, this has to be removed, this venue doesn't have jurisdiction based off of and due process of law, they'll try to follow up with the 14th Amendment. Like, just, in case somebody is saying that, they have no jurisdiction and you're not under all of that, that's how they try to do it. I'm just saying, for the record. From my experience, I know that.
So what?
Like,
that's interesting. Hey. Well, yeah. And but you know what? That's interesting. That's interesting to know. And this is why your writs must precede you. Because if it's an issue of due process of law, then you've got to know that in your writs, you got to be referenced in the Fourth Bill of Rights all over the place. Fourth Bill of Rights, Fourth Bill of Rights. So your document goes into, it goes into some record somewhere. And you now have it on record that you couldn't possibly come and talk to me about the 14th Amendment because I came in letting you know that we was talking about the Fourth Amendment.
Exactly.
And the 14th Amendment is redundant because it first of all, it says the Fourth Amendment, which is due process of law, right? Now, if the 14th Amendment is for corporations, and we got a judge last year on record stating that the Constitution doesn't apply to corporations, what the hell is the 14th Amendment? Really, what is the 14th Amendment? The 14th Amendment applies to corporations, but the Constitution don't apply to corporations. So why are we even mentioning the 14th Amendment?
Right. Well, that's because people are not mentioning the Constitution, period.
Well, that is true. That is true.
Yeah. So they done ran wild with that one. So now, let me say this. So in what Ms. is saying is that when you say due process of law, they're talking about the 14th Amendment with an assumption that is law. Or that it even applies to election of black beings. Well, neither is true.
Well,
yeah,
you know what's interesting? Well, you know what's interesting is listening to this modern European, right? This modern European in this recording, he's basically saying that the protection of the Constitution, he's saying that the Constitution, black people. Now, people they like to always assign Asiatic people, the Aboriginal Indigenous people of this land. They always want to assign themselves the term black or slave. When we were never the blacks and we were never the slaves. All right, but he said that the Constitution was not written to protect black people, but modern Europeans today erroneously classified as white people. Now, if we go back to the 1846, right, I believe the 14th Amendment came in somewhere around there, right? Wasn't it 1840-something? So if you look at the 14th Amendment, I know it came in around there, maybe 20 years after or something. Yeah.
Yeah, 1865, if I'm not mistaken, 14th Amendment.
All right, so about 20 years later. So now look at this.
Yeah.
He's saying that the Constitution doesn't apply to black people, but the true black people is the modern Europeans erroneously call white people. Now, you got to look at the history. The British Moors never intended for the modern Europeans to ever be free from slavery. All right? And they affirmed this in, like, the Secret Treaty of Verona. Their intent was to infiltrate wherever they can so that the modern Europeans would never be slaves. Never be free. All right? So now this guy is saying that the Constitution wasn't written for black people. It wasn't. It's a the Constitution is based on universal law. It was written down so that they would have it to follow. But now when you look at the 14th Amendment, right, the 14th Amendment is written for corporations that don't exist. So how can something that doesn't exist even participate in due process of law? You see what I'm saying? To me, what that is demonstrating was an underhanded way of cutting, cutting the modern Europeans out of the Republican form of government that was established for them, which was the intent of the Secret Treaty of Verona.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The 14th Amendment was never written for the Asiatic people. It really was written for the true black people, the modern Europeans. It made them invisible. And if you're invisible as a corporation, then the due process of law doesn't apply because it can't apply to something that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because check out the timeline too, Annie. The 14th Amendment, they're alleging it was ratified July 9th, 1868. That's the allegation of being, quote-unquote, ratified, right? But we know Congress had walked out, walked out without days in the deal. But check it out. So July 9th, 1868, then 2 years later, in July 1870, they amended the Naturalization Act for that, where free white persons applies specifically to those of Moorish descent and Asiatics and things of that nature. But they utilize that in the Naturalization Act, not law. That's when the Europeans first started on paper being called white like that, because they was pushing that campaign for a minute since like 1854, and then they made the corporate tangible thing go on. It's crazy. It's a crazy myth. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the timeline is 1868. They're saying they ratified the 14th Amendment. Then in 1870, they came with the Naturalization Act, where those of European descent started commonly being counted as white. But, so, yeah, the timeline is just, all of the artificial aspects in that time frame add up. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a systematic process they did, but it's still colorable and it's still in the law.
It's color of law, right. So yeah, and that's the Magi basically trying to say, look, I'm not going to argue with you about personam, territorial jurisdiction, none of that. They do it subtle, like it's so subtle, where they'll be like, oh, due process of law, well, under the 14th Amendment, because it's all about, I think it's more so about agreements, right? Because, like, yeah, they violate people, but I was thinking about this. Like, from when I observed in these so-called courtrooms, these are meeting rooms, pilgrim auction blocks, basically, one of the things that I see happen often is they try to make agreements with people or payment plans and things like that. And it's funny because there's expressed prohibitions, if you will. I don't know if I should even say law, but it's expressed prohibitions as far as nobody being able to go to jail for debt. But at the same time, people are getting locked up for, not paying their fine, not paying child support, not paying these things, right? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, what they do is they don't make it about the debt. They make it about the agreement. So if they say, okay, we'll pay, they find somebody $500 and they say, well, I could pay, 50 notes a week. Like, if they don't do that, they don't necessarily attack the fact that they didn't pay. They attack that the agreement was broke.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, so the word is bond when you're in there. So when they bring up things like 14th Amendment, when you're talking due process of law, 5th Amendment, you need to be aware of those types of linguistics that are being used, those words, because that's how they do it. So the argument to them, your personam jurisdiction and, territorial jurisdiction argument, they'll sum it up like that, 14th Amendment due process. And that's how, it's the truth. That's how they do it. To some people, And it doesn't make it right, but they got game. They got a lot of game.
Yeah, they the real pimps and hustlers. Real for real. Yes, indeed.
For sure.
All right, I'm back. So with that, we're going to take some calls. If anyone has a question, comment, concern that they would like to put on the table, press 1 on your telephone dial, and we'll take the calls in the order that we receive them. It's interesting because everybody seems to be listening, and there hasn't been one hand up at all. And I'm hoping that there's no, well, I don't know, because I'm hoping that the Q button is working. I don't have anything that says it's not working, because I don't see anybody with their hand up at all. So either everybody's just engrossed in the conversation and just attentively listening, or the Q button is not working. I don't know which one it is.
So yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Hopefully it light up. But yeah, so that's what we got to be aware of, is, you know, just the different words, because it's all jurisdiction. You know, how they try to use those words, the art of how to use those words when they reduce them to writing, you know, and all of this is a part of how they're doing it. These are just staples, like staples in knowing that, of what they're dealing with. Because they always talk about, you know, whenever there's a dispute or a claim, it all goes back to territory, you know, to the land.
Mm-hmm.
When they claim their existence, they're giving the implication that it's tied to the land when it's not, you know. So when they talk about you did within the jurisdiction of what jurisdiction of what court, you know what I mean? Because this is it's the fact that this court is the so-called court anyway, establishment, is not on your ancestral soil. Check it out. When we went to the plantation, like when we visited the plantation in so-called Virginia, do you know that's the oldest family-owned business in North America? Not in the United States, North America, right? So the house has been in unbroken succession of this Pilgrim family for 8 generations. Just 8, that's it. You know what I mean? 8. And it might be encroaching on 9, probably about now. But what I'm saying is the Virginia Company, all of these, the West Indian Company, all of these corporations, right? Their whole dealing was in flesh and things from the land, you know, furs, people. All of this was what they was trying to, what they saw some sort of value in, you know, because you know how they say, you know, others see you more plainly than you see yourself sometimes. So they're looking at it like, all right, well, you know, what can they do? They can mine, you know, the mountains and, you know, dig up gold and, you know, till the land. They have these skills and abilities, things that was just natural to us. They saw so-called industry in, you know what I mean? Like they were trying to monopolize that and include the people within that natural energy. But I'm saying that to say that when you look at these corporations, right, specifically that have pilgrim origins, they really don't go back that far in lineage, and they all had to do with the land. You know what I mean? The earth. Like, this is what it's about. This is what it's all about, is the planet Earth. You know what I mean? Because this is where we're at. So that's the foundation for everything. So their whole thing is, okay, we created an artificial matrix, which the amendment, right? And all of those by what? Agreement, because if you go back and again read the Declaration of Independence, it was claimed by their foremothers and forefathers, etc., that, you know, you have the right to, they only derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, meaning that people have to consent to that. So the whole thing is to get you to agree or consent to a word is bond type of artificial jurisdiction. It's crazy because jurisdiction means right words. So even when you got the paperwork right, if you do step before these people on a special appearance or special visitation, you know what I mean? Or even if you feel as though you're that special and it's an epiphany for you to be in their presence or whatever, you know what I mean? Always know that foundation is planet Earth. How does your ancestors relate to that? Keep that in mind, and that you have to know, like really know where they're coming from with that whole artificial jurisdiction. So again, due process of law, keep in mind that they're talking, when they talk 14th Amendment, they're talking outside of the original Constitution, because if Congress walked out sine die and the 14th Amendment was ratified 1868 after Congress walked out, then that means that that's not official. There was no constitutional convention where, you know, the Great Seal and you know, the Pilgrims or Moors and Pilgrims convened, you know, and made agreements again. I don't know. I'm that part, you know what I mean? But I'm just saying that for them to say that you were born and naturalized within the United States, and this brings me back to the jurisdictional aspect again, because, yeah, we had Congress before the Pilgrims or modern Europeans were brought into the fold, but it was called a Continental Congress. And again, the United States is not a continent. It's not a continent. So you got to watch that jurisdiction when they're talking about being born or naturalized in the United States. And it's sad because, like you spoke of earlier, there's a lot of our people who are doing it to us. And they say crazy things because what it shows is a lack of knowledge of geography, because certain people say, oh, Canada, that's Canada. You're in there. And they said this to Brother Cujo. You know what I mean? Oh, Canaan land, y'all in Canada, worry about Canada. Like, this shows the mental illness and lack of knowledge of geography. You know what I mean? But all of this history links back together, because if it was continental, right, and United States is not the continent, America is, right? You're talking about a totally different and way more broad jurisdiction than the United States Congress. Continental. So let that sink in, you know what I mean? And really understand this is all about territory, personam jurisdiction, impropria persona. Because what? The whole thing with the business, the whole essence of, quote-unquote, Dred Scott was based off of so-called slavery, right? This is what the essence was based off of. So when you look at the workings of that, this is, again, right back to status, because you got to remind yourself that even while there was Moors who got enslaved, shall I say, enslaved or reduced to that condition, you know, that never really made them, quote-unquote, slaves, and there were other people who were not in that condition. So for everybody to adopt the narrative that everybody with brown skin at one point, you know, had to descend from slaves, that's a totally false notion, totally false idea, you know, and to this day, we see what's going on, you know, and it doesn't make anybody, you know, holier than thou, but it's just the fact that everybody didn't go through that fate. It was a large population that did, and that are right now, you know, because they guised it with the so-called jails and the prisons and all of these things, you know, all of these things. But this is just institutions now for so-called slavery, so-called, you know, and that's what's going on. It didn't stop. And nobody's exclusive to it because you have pilgrims who are locked up in there too. You got the Borinquins who are locked up in there too. You got the Mexican family who's locked up in there too. So basically they like, you know, a calf or a bull. Either way, we got a cow. You know what I mean? And that's how they're looking at it. Everybody could get it. They don't care about, you know, if you're, you know, if that lion got the same stripe as the tiger. They're in the business of zookeeping. You know what I mean? Again, it goes back, and it showed you that again before, not to mix the because this is real through the visual in Django. They showed you that when he was whipping the they was about to whip the sister on the tree, he was over there reading Bible quotes about dominion over what? The earth, the land, right? And every beast of the field and all of these things. But he was looking at the sister like she was a part of that. You know what I mean? So, again, you got different psychologies dealing with this Christian society, Moors and Christians. You know, that's what it is. And here we are today. Fast forward, President-elect Donald Trump is up. Businessman, corporate. You know all about that 14th Amendment. You know what I mean? And he knows about Moors. Again, he started his legacy building off of what? His father, all of them were into real estate. All right, so they know that this is all about territory. They know that the foundation is planet Earth. That's what this is about. Your experience, your existence here, right? Even if you into your divine and you woke up, the balance of that experience on this earth plane, you know what I mean, is a big key, you know, so you're not just out there, you know, stuck behind Mars, like to bring all of that to earth, you know, the balance, as above, so below. So you see them dealing with real estate, so-called real estate, or cheating and, you know, conquest, because again, conquering and conquest also in Scott law. And again, they are dealing with Scottish right and things like that. And in Scotch law, you know what I mean, conquest is also buying things out, like buying the land. So, you know, you might be looking for the sword and they lying in your pocket. You know what I mean? They're not even trying to kill you like that. They like agree to this, you know? So, I mean, it is what it is. But, again, it's all about the land. Moors, Christians, Trump, he comes from a whole legacy of those who know very well about Moors and land and territory and estate and territorial jurisdiction and, you know, eminent domain and being born because you national domiciles, things like that. They know what it is. It's a corporation. Like I said, the oldest business in North America, family business, shall I say. Let me qualify that. They're saying the oldest family business in North America, not United States, but North America, the Shirley Plantation, right, which again was dealing with what? Slavery. So family business is all about the land for them. Like, that's how they're looking at it. So keep that in mind. Natural law is supreme. Pilgrims can't really have that jurisdiction without consent, even though they try to, you know, press you and harass you and all of these things, you know. The facts still remain. It is what it is. So with that, I yield the floor, fam. Islam.
All right. I'm not sure if the queue is working because I don't have anybody with their hands up, and that's so not usual at all. At least one person somebody always has some sort of a question, a comment, a concern that they want to make. But I'm not seeing any.
I just got your message. I'm going to check now.
Yeah. Oh, wait, maybe it is. Here's somebody. All right. All right, caller 773-619. You're live on the air. Please state your affiliation at Northwest Mexico. Islam, are you there? All right. Well, I'm not. Islam? All righty. All right. Well, we have another caller. Caller 443-376. You're live on the air. Please state your affiliation at Northwest Mexico.
Peaceful greetings, Islam. I am Hassan Ghazi Obey, Northwest Mexico. Just wanted to say excellent class to all of you, all of the family. Excellent class, Brother Cujo. Excellent class, family. I yield the floor. Islam, peace and love.
Oh, all right.
A time when we were one in the dog, right? Thanks for the acknowledgement. That is
all righty.
He said that real fast, like, oh, shoot, I got to go do that right now.
All right. All right. So, like I said, I'm not sure.
I'm almost there. Well, he got through.
Yeah, he got through. Yeah, which is a good thing.
Problem. Remember when I signed in, I hit the wrong thing, and the next thing I know, I didn't get the voice saying you are now in the queue. So apparently something's wrong with that voice because I can hear it now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Did you press 1 now? Have you tried pressing 1?
I can't tell whether I am or I am not. Do you see me with the 1 right now?
No.
Right, but I'm talking. And if I press 1, it doesn't.
It doesn't put you in the queue. I mean, I have to go through. No, it doesn't.
It says nothing at all. Well, that's a problem because, it started. I see that I'm on, but if I won, I should go off. I'm not. There's no question mark there. So there could be. There might be
something new.
Experiencing problem I experienced early on because I can't even put my hand up. Miss, you're on the line. Press. Well, no, if you press this 1,
Miss is in the queue. Miss press 1 and he's in the queue.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, we could just keep going in,
Yeah, well, we can early out because, 773. Did you try that call?
Yeah, I did. 773. I'm gonna try it again. 773-619. You're live on the air. Are you there?
Islam. Can you hear me, family?
Islam. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. My appellation is Roscoe Bay. I have a question in regards to a default judgment. I have a situation going on where I sent out an affidavit of fact for nature discovery, and it wasn't answered. Mm-hmm. I then sent out an affidavit of fact for default judgment, and I have some property that a third party has acquired, and I've been communicating with them trying to get my property back. Party is concerned about whether or not they're going to be sued by the person that they're under contract with. I explained to them that the default judgment states that all third-party contracts are void ab initio. And we've been going back and forth for a couple of days. So I'm kind of stuck right now. I'm still kind of new to this. I've been studying for about 3 years now. I've been listening and doing some research. And I have to say that I've been kind of leery because my grandmother warned me at an early age that I had to be real careful when it came down to this nationality and who I trusted. Some of the same things that I'm hearing some of the sisters and brothers speak on, and starting to see that, everybody's not your friend.
That's
so
right.
I've been trying to do some things amongst myself through trial and error and taking it very, very seriously because my main concern is, making sure that we reclaim our estate, because my grandmother warned me about this at about age 6 to 8. And she told me some things I had no idea about. And, I kind of put myself in a certain manner all these years and try to stay away from certain things, using my spirit, and my own mind to guide me. And I have to say that the people on this call and on RV Bay, regardless of what's being said, I'm telling you, I feel in my spirit that y'all are doing the right thing. I will back you 100%. I would never let anybody say anything bad about you. Mm-hmm. My grandmother warned me about all these brothers and sisters that were selling us out. And one of the main things that she told me, not to get too long-winded, she told me to stay out that lodge and not to mess with anybody that was trying to get me to go into the temple.
Wow.
And it seems like whenever I reach out to get help, that's one of the main things they tell me. You got to come to the temple. You got to come to the temple. And I'd rather scrap and fight by myself than to be in dishonor of what my grandmother and my mother told me. Because they told me I gave you everything that you needed. And if I didn't give it to you, you didn't need it. And that's something that just sticks in my brain. So back to what I'm saying, I'm kind of stuck right now in a dilemma as far as how I should proceed. I'm not mindful about starting a lawsuit or anything like that. The gentleman that I've spoke with, he seems to be, trying to do the right thing. His biggest concern is he doesn't want to be sued.
By whom? Why would he be sued? Yeah.
Well, he thinks that the company he has the contract with is going to come after him. But I told him they can't come after him because they haven't even answered the affidavit of fact.
What kind of contract does he have?
Well, he's a repossession company, and he has my car. It's been sitting there 30 days, and I spoke with him. He says, I know it's something not right because they haven't contacted me to tell me what to do with the car. He said, but I just don't want them to come behind me, come after me after I give you the property. You know what he's saying to you?
He's saying, I don't know law like you know law, so I won't know what to do if they come after me about your property that he's holding unlawfully, of which you've shown him that he is. So he's saying, oh, no, they're my God, and he needs to use the same law to protect himself that you're using, and this is where we have our problems. You can see that, right?
Exactly.
Well, you know what? It's not enough, really not enough information to really advise you. And I really wouldn't want you to go into it on this public line or forum.
Okay.
So how about if we do this? How about if we take down your number and call you back?
That would be
and
perfect.
And maybe we can discuss it a bit more that way, because
okay.
I have your number from what you called in on, so we can call you back and talk about that.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate that, sister. Thank you.
All righty.
I yield back.
All right. Peace and love. All right. Well, it is 12 o'clock, just about. And we don't have any more callers. Either we don't have any more callers or for whatever reason it's just not showing up. I apologize if that's the case. We can either end 30 minutes early. We will be doing class at the National Theater. We're on the third floor now. We're back on the third floor. We're not on the ground floor in the building in the next door building. So
such a mess, ain't it?
I know.
I just got used to that room there and kind of liked it, especially the intimacy of it. But now we're back up on the third floor. So if you come, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we shall be there tomorrow And let's see, the class, the doors open at 6:30. Class begins at 7:30, and I got to remember what I was going to talk about.
You know
if
what?
I don't remember.
Don't say it in case you change your mind. Just it'll be good, whatever it is.
Yes. And this is a full week. We got Principles of Nationality in action today. We got World Heritage and History School tomorrow, and we have Sons of Allah this Thursday. We had Sisters Standing on Law this past Sunday. You know, usually Sons of Allah.
I gotta say, Sisters Standing on Law this past Sunday was a classic. Everybody who was not listening needs to go. No, really, it's true. It is real. It was really a classic one. You know, many of ours are, but I'm just saying. So go on the archives. What date is that? What is it? The 16th. That was the 16th. Sunday the 16th. It just passed. Check it out.
Yeah. Yes. It was the 16th. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We got and we'll have Sons of Allah this Thursday, 9 p.m. And let's see, I think we'll be back here on next Tuesday for another edition of Principles of Nationality. So since we don't have, I think something is wrong. I really do. I think something must be wrong.
Well, you know it is. I told you what happened with me.
Yeah.
So,
it's not working. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to close out just a wee bit early. We rarely ever do that.
But
it's a good thing. We'll see you back here on tomorrow, 7:30 for Morris Heritage and History School. If peace and love and Islam to all.
All right, peace and love.
Peace and love, Morris.
All right.
Our problem is lack of knowledge and the intended deceit and trickery done, because even those who read the bibliotext that you call the Bible says he shall fool even the most believe. So even those who think they're highly educated and this and that, they've been fooled. That's it. It's not really complicated.
It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows it to those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows except those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. The gods are back. The Moors are strapped. We waking up. And we want our land back, running off, that's a trap. You know them guys don't like that. Waking up from a nap, like where the hell my crown at? Take a step back, like I know this bitch ain't bite back. It's kinda crazy how this karma it strikes back. We enslaved Islam, so they slaved us right back. We called them niggas, then they nigga this right back. We brought them to light, but they ain't bring that right back. If I was lazy, dirty dancing with the baby, then just maybe won't revolt like Haiti. I too smart, Lova, Tor, Marcus Garvey, your ass. Nova, Julia, our leading God, body the man. Now I ain't gotta be bad, and you ain't gotta be mad, but the planet is heating up, so the first I'll be last. I got that melanin that's better than anything you ever medicine. We at your front door, wonder why you never let us in. Oh, I get it, you never wanted to put some credits in. Well, just forget it, cause I don't know if you can edit sin. We've been enlightened long before Thomas Edison. Skeletons to prove that you wasn't even relevant. In the Caucasus Mountains, cause the sun was your deficit. Captain Caveman with the plan of the Jesuits. Check my bloodline, but in time I bring the evidence. Self-governing body, so I don't need no president. Democrat, Republican, donkey versus elephant. I studied in law, so I ain't down with none of that. I self-law and master, so I'm running that. This Molotov cocktail burns faster, so I like the match. Despite the fact that ain't even what I'm mad at. I spit the truth, so here's the roof so you can hear that. My skin is brown and here's the proof, but you ain't hearing that. Dead in the eyes of the law, that's why they call you black. Naming all caps when you fall, that's why I strike back. And strike that from the record ab initio. You gon' need more than some pressure, I got a vicious flow. I can take the road to the high, or I can hit don't wanna know. Doggone inside of my tribe, they coming no more.
If you believe that your history started on a slave boat, I can guarantee you that's where it ended too. That's what I'm saying. Then, after saying that, and so don't believe me, go back and do some studies past the 1700s, and I'll guarantee you, sure as you're sitting there listening, or wherever you are, watching, listening, you will find nothing but the word more. And that's another thing. Because we weren't called black. That description, maybe, black or more or whatever, but that's it. Know the difference between a description and an actual, person, place, or thing, noun. I mean, really.
It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows it, to those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. It's the miseducation of the Negro. Everybody knows except those who need to know. It's the miseducation of the Negro. When we rise from the dead, they call us Pharaoh. From the pyramids to the project, the beginning is the part they want you to forget. Implant your memory with that noose around your neck. It's the King Alpha plan and it's set in full effect. The butler, the help, in 12 years a slave. Django and Selma, they get them accolades. They made a movie called Exodus about the gods and kings with an all-white cast from Egypt. Now that's a shame. They ain't never seen no movie about no European slaves. We were traveling the seas when they was living in caves. We had to civilize them, show them how to behave. In fact, we brought them light and taught them how to bathe. This is trading places with stolen identity. We agreed to be educated by our own enemy. Reverse psychology, I'ma need a lobotomy. An exorcism just to get this shit up out of me. Roz Mariah, Anna Eve, Miss Raheem, Tariq, Cujo from Cannonland. Listen to them speak. I done learned from the best. I don't need no DNA test. The nations in my womb have given from the breast. The empire's back, so you know what's next. The Moors are waking up, now you must confess. Yes, yes. The Moors are waking up, now you must confess.
Birthright theft. The whole deal was, where's my land that, for them? The whole deal was like, this is really quote-unquote promised land. This is really the quote-unquote heart of civilization. This is really what you might call Northwest Africa. That's what, and I say that to people so they can stop saying I'm going back to Africa and understand that they're in it. It's the Garden of Eden.
That's what they had in Columbus's journal, but they arrived in Eden.
So what has happened is absolute lies. That's right. And the land of milk and honey is another terminology. So these things are important because as you're doing studies, and if it says the land of milk and honey, you need to know they're talking about the North American continent. If you don't know that, then you miss it. And that's part of our problem. That part of our problem is the miseducation. We have been lied to, lied to, lied to, lied to, lied to, lied to.
Welcome to Staples.
Staples Guy. I've resolved to save my office money in 2017.
During Staples' January printing event, you can get up to $80 off a lightning-fast HP OfficeJet Pro printer. It can save time and money.
Oh, that kind of savings will impress the boss. Maybe this